everybody. My name is Griffin Mackey, and I am the article presenter for the debate over America becoming less liberal, but not necessarily more conservative. Specifically, this article highlights the changes of people's political standings in America over recent years. This article is actually connected to what we talk about in our class and our lectures over these past 2 weeks, as democracy actually allows for the different political views to be held and also for people to have these discussions on why they feel and align with these certain political views or these, democratic and conservative parties. So certain changes in the way that people consume information, like social media, could be a reason that many people are actually shifting their views. Another specific reason could be, like Mercedes will say, is that the younger generation in growing older and their world becoming bigger, their views on popular or controversial topics are actually changing as they become, more aware of different ways or different resources to gather information, in around the world of politics and specifically this topic. So in the context of Democratic and Republican parties, there has been a noticeable asymmetrical polarization of these parties. Now, when I say asymmetrical polarization, I mean that a side of the political perspective can essentially shift to becoming more extreme than one another. For example, as Democratic voters slowly move towards the middle position, or moderate, as others refer to as, there is also a noticeable shift of conservative people going more right than before. Now, when it comes to liberal ideologies, during these past years, different liberal values are being challenged, which can lead to ideas of reduced liberalism, by conservative people. And according to the data of this article that I'm presenting, Democrats who identify as liberal have decreased by almost 5%, while the same sample of Republicans that represent the conservative side have actually reported an increase of about 7%. So with this shift of both parties, it is actually proven that Republicans are more likely to label themselves as very conservative compared to Democrats who are actually labeling themselves as less liberal. So they're going two different ways. On the Republican side, while a noticeable shift of white voters becoming slightly more conservative is shown, it is also apparent that non-white voters, specifically when I say non-white voters, Black and Hispanic Republicans, are actually showing an average shift of about 14.5% towards the right or Republican side. This shift of decreased liberalism could also allude to a surge in conservatism, but it does not exactly translate or correlate. A better way to describe could be to describe this shift of decreased liberalism could be more so actually a shift of people's political views becoming more polarized, or even people having more extreme views compared to just a reduction in liberalism. So there's different factors than just people becoming less liberal. Another party also to note is the Independent Party, who in this article have shown an increase in identifying with the moderate party by almost 10%, while others who say they are conservative or liberal actually declined in the same measure. So this is the article that I have presented for you guys, and it will lay the foundation for the debate that Johnny and Mercedes will have, and I will now give the floor to them. So this is the second presentation of the American government course that we're taking, and the second presentation is supposed to be conservative versus liberal beliefs and what we think. I'm Johnny Bowen. I am supporting the more conservative
side, and I am Mercedes, and I'm going to be explaining the liberal side of some things. So what is a liberal? Liberals tend to support political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, and democracy. They tend to go more for new age things. They take a law and they want to see ways to improve that law or reform, like in prison and police departments and stuff like that. Their morality lies in the rights of the individual and equality before the law.
All right, and the conservative side. So what is a conservative? Basically the opposite. Basically, we want to conserve the different beliefs and moral beliefs that we have in the past, and we want to keep the present and keep those beliefs for the next generation, because we feel like it's been working for a while.
Mm-hmm. So my first topic of discussion is going to be, why are Americans leaning to be less liberal? And based on the article that we all had read, it's mainly middle-aged people that have started to move away from liberalism and more towards actually independent and not conservative. There is a slight rise in conservatism. And I think that is because there has been a rise in taboo topics such as abortion, trans rights. The last major drop from liberal to conservative was in 2012 when Obama was elected office and publicly supported gay marriage. That was the last major drop from liberalism, because it introduces something that's really controversial, and the public doesn't necessarily like controversial, especially that middle-aged generation and a little bit of an older generation.
I feel like my first topic kind of deflects what you're basically talking about. My first topic is, why do Republicans identify themselves more as conservative than Democrats identify themselves as liberal? I feel like it's because of the taboo topics that you're relegating to, because I feel like from the outside view, Democrats are very, well, when it comes to like politics, and they're very versed in what they believe, and whenever they believe this, they want to kind of like make their beliefs more valid. And whenever it comes to these taboo topics and like the controversial takes that the liberal side have, like it's like my body, my right kind of thing, and it's fine to an extent, I guess. But it's just the belief that it should always be left, and it's like most Democrats is like, well, maybe I don't believe that sometimes, and they want to kind of like separate themselves from that extremist crowd and kind of put themselves kind of in the moderate Democrat.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And Republicans feel like, and I feel like whenever it comes to conservatism, like
hard word.
Hard word. Basically, I feel like when you get older, you can seem to basically lean towards a certain way, then go to. That's how I felt like I grew up. From
once you grew up, you started learning more about the world, and you felt like, okay, now I really do have a stronger belief towards this party instead of this party, or these beliefs based on instead of the opposite.
Yeah, I feel like as you grow up to be more proud of your beliefs.
Right.
And when it comes to Republicans identifying themselves as more conservatives, that kind of goes into that area, a gray area. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. So my next topic is going to be, why is the younger generation leaning more towards liberalism? And I believe it's because many young Americans lean toward liberal side because of social media and how easy it is to learn information now. Before, the only information you could get was like newspapers or your parents or your grandparents. But now, if these kids have a question, they're going to Google it, and they have been raised in an environment, especially like the younger adults, like, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21s, they were all raised through the Black Lives Matter movement, through trans rights and trans youth rights movements and stuff like that. So they have been able to really involve themselves in those things that they see other people are passionate about. And they know more about these argumentative themes versus the conservative middle-aged people because of that availability to them, the availability of information, and they can actually see people who are going through it and how they feel because they share it on TikTok, they share it on Facebook, they share it on YouTube. How many times do you see like, this is my story, I want to share it with you because this is the reason why I support trans rights or abortion or this or that.
Yeah, I understand your point because I feel like the younger generation is kind of throwing a lot of things that the older generation hasn't been thrown with. And basically, the young generation's kind of like, well, this is different now. Why don't you just adapt, kind of thing. And it honestly, to an extent, yes, it is different. Like, economics is so much more different. Like, in the past, you can buy a house with a middle-class salary, but the middle-class salary in the past couple years have been tremendously moved. The goalpost has been moved tremendous strides, which is insane to think about. But the thing is that with the younger generation, they're more susceptible to consume information from, say, TikTok, and instead of actually going to like news sites. And because it's much easier, because like 15 second clip is much easier to consume than like a 2-page article
to read. Yeah, absolutely.
With the basically the 15-second videos or 30-second videos, like most of the time it could just be statistics. And like with this 2-page article, it could be both statistics with substance. That's what I feel. I see. And with the younger side leaning towards liberalism than conservatism, it's basically just, and it could be the same vice versa.
I agree. Yeah. A good point is like the younger generation takes those 15 or 30-second clips and they fill in the holes based off context clues. Versus the older generation, they tend to they want to find those answers. Okay, but why? And like, let me find a reputable source, because a TikTok video is not necessarily a reputable source. Neither is a Facebook post or an Instagram post. So I think as the younger generation gets older as well, they start leaning more towards that independent group, which may also cause that fluctuation where lesser liberal, more independent, and maybe a little bit more conservative, because these taboo topics are being raised again. And when you're a kid, your world is this big, and you only know this much about the big things happening in the world, versus when you get older, your world gets this big, and there's way more context to it. And that's why they may change their way of thinking from like liberalism to more independent, because they don't really know what side they're on yet, because both sides are still evolving and changing.
Yes, of course.
One other thing, I also believe that liberals are more open-minded than conservatives because they're more susceptible to that change and that information. They're looking for ways to better our world and our country as a whole. So they take one law and they want to see, can we strengthen that law? Is that law too strong? Can we weaken that law? And I feel like liberals really do chase reform more than conservatives.
Yeah, okay, so I understand that too. I actually understand that, and I agree to an extent. I feel like, the liberal side is much more open-minded than the conservative side. But you gotta look at it from like another perspective. It's like, I say I got cancer, right? And I need to get rid of it. Instead of trying to figure out what was wrong internally, I just like, I'm gonna chop off my arm.
No more cancer. That's like extreme.
It's an extreme change that I'm bringing to the table. It's like, I'm gonna cut off my arm. It's in my arm, I'm gonna cut it off. And I feel like as a conservative, I look into it, and we all look into the facts and how we can change it from the inside instead of making some big change. And I feel like it brings me to my other topic. I feel like being open-minded is not enough to bring change to what you care about. Because when it comes to that stuff, basically, I think being open-minded doesn't help with the progression of liberal values. Because when you're pushing these liberal values down like so heavily, and it becomes kind of, I guess, needy to an extent, I guess.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it is.
But it can come off that way.
Come off that way, exactly. And basically, whenever say, you have these protests for like trans rights and my body, my choice.
Yeah.
The other side's like just be more, I guess, civil about it, I guess. And then it's like this progression that they won't isn't gonna lead anywhere because of the ways they're going about it, I guess.
I guess that's true, because of course there's always a good way to go about it. I think that Americans really value our rights as far as our right to protest. I think people take these huge moments that have happened in our history within the past 5 years and kind of ran with it. So I can see where you're going with, like, there are better ways to go about it than you're rioting in the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. And I feel like these beliefs, understanding and leads to cancellation. When it comes to, whenever you're trying to suppress someone else's opinion, I feel like your opinion isn't as valid. It's like you're trying to fight fire with fire. It's like hate on hate. And so what we're trying to actually shoot for, which is the middle ground. We're both trying to, each side is both trying to hit where each side is happy. It's basically the same thing with Constitution. When they were making that, they were trying to both sides of Constitution. Favoring their self-interest, of course. But was it building a country? Of course. That's what the middle ground they met at. I feel like right now we're not meeting that middle ground as a modern society, and we're just hating each other, which...
Okay, yeah. So instead of coming to a conclusion civilly and actually coming to a compromise, we've just been fighting fire with fire, and at the end of that fight, there's nothing going to be left to even improve, because now we've ruined it.
Yeah, exactly. That was all my points.
Yeah, that's mine. I think that was good.
All right.
Ready, break.